Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm so pleased you're able to join us for this food-focused event exclusively for Waitrose customers this evening. I hope you're all set up maybe with some snacks to keep you going on our adventure to 3 destinations that I'm sure will make your stomach rumble, even if you've just had dinner. My name is Jay. I'm Director of Marketing for Explore, and I'm going to be your host for the next hour. So, coming up, what can you expect from our Food Adventures event today? We're going to give you a short intro into what we're all about at Explore, and then I'll welcome 3 of my colleagues who will transport you to these unique culinary places. They'll talk about their experiences as well as giving some key practical info on what to expect and what not to miss on your visit. We'll finish with some time to answer some questions live and to tell you about an exciting exclusive offer. And then finally, a prize draw right at the end. Before we get started, a few tips just to make sure that everything runs as smoothly as possible. Everyone is automatically on mute, but we would love you to make use of the chat and the Q&A features. On the chat, you should be able to see both buttons, chat and Q&A. On the chat, it would be great if you could tell us where you're viewing from, if you've been on an Explore adventure before, maybe, or your favorite dish or culinary destination you've visited so far. But if you've got questions that you want our team to answer, please use the Q&A function. I've got a team of brilliant experts in the office with me who'll be answering questions as we go through, and then we'll also keep some to answer live at the end. If you miss anything or you duck out, do not worry. We're recording this event and we'll share the recording along with a summary of the most frequently asked questions in an email with the offer and the link, and you'll get that email by the end of the week. Cool. So about Explore. Before we get started properly, I know that some of you know Explore already and have even travelled with us, but some are not so familiar. So a little bit about us. We run over 350 small group adventures to more than 100 countries around the world. We have classic cultural discovery trips, walking, cycling, and family trips, and more important for tonight, culinary adventures. All of our tours run with small groups of like-minded travellers. They have an expert leader and they focus on unforgettable experiences. Why would you choose Explore for your next adventure? Well, we've recently received a Platinum Trusted Service Award from FIFO, and that's because our customer reviews are over 4.5 out of 5, which is something we're really proud of. We've also just become B Corp certified, and that's all about being a business that cares about people and sustainability, something to look up if you're interested in that, and you can find information on our website. On our trips, you see a mix of famous sites and hidden gems that others might miss or not even know about. As travellers, we want to experience a place, not merely observe it. We take you closer to the country, its people, and its culture, often in unscripted, spontaneous, impossible to replicate ways. Our fabulous tour leaders use their expert insider knowledge and local connections to make the most of unexpected opportunities. You might be invited to watch the sunrise from a lighthouse or to join family Diwali celebrations. The leader is always on hand to come up with extra special things to do and also make sure your trip runs smoothly, take care of all of the logistics. The average group size is just 11, which is big enough to meet like-minded people, but small enough to really get to the heart of a destination. And sustainability is at the heart of what we do, and we only work with partners who have similar values to our own. Right, enough about us. I'm delighted that this evening I'm going to be joined by 3 of our product team, Ali, James and Valet. These are the people who put our trips together and then ensure that they're kept right up to date. They're going to be presenting their destinations, answering all the questions that you ask online behind the scenes, and then we'll also bring them back for the Q&A near the end. So let's start talking about all that lovely food. Food and drink is a big part of what travel is about. I think for all of you, certainly for me, we love searching for authentic fare, eating at food stalls, enjoying home cooking, trying out regional specialities. And that's why our product managers have designed a range of tours where the cultural discovery of the tour is enriched by a range of included food-focused experience to add some extra flavour to your tour. They're not cooking holidays. They look at all sorts of food and drink elements, from growing to processing, cooking, tasting, and of course, eating and drinking as well. Please note that the tours have been designed without food restrictions in mind, as we wanted to have an all-encompassing culinary experience. But if you have any food restrictions, I'm vegetarian, please get in touch with us and we can talk you through individually to discuss whether a particular tour can be adapted or suggest some alternatives. So, places and focus. Tonight, at today's event, we're going to look at our foodie tours in Japan, the south of France and Georgia. These are just 3 of the food adventures that we organise. We'll be covering cultural highlights and culinary experiences you can expect when visiting these. First off, I'd like to introduce James Adkin, who will talk to you about Japan. Over to you, James.
Thank you, Jay, and thanks everybody for joining us. So I'm going to kick it off with a whistle-stop tour of Japan. So if we start off with the map, and I just want to say, first of all, I went to Japan for the first time last year, and it rapidly, instantly became one of my absolute favorite destinations I've ever been to. Even on the flight home, I was already planning my next trip, which will hopefully be soon. Part of the purpose of my journey was to put together this trip, which was focused really on the food and drink. But I'd have to say I could talk forever about any aspect of Japan because I found it endlessly fascinating. It's the land from the future and the past at the same time. There are so many things in Japan that are done in a different way to anywhere else in the world. So it's a wonderful destination, and one of the ultimate highlights for me was the food and the drink. It really is a foodie heaven. So starting with the map, this is a really zoomed in map of Japan. We're focusing on the main island, which is Honshu, because the actual Japanese islands are a string from Hokkaido in the north down to Okinawa in the south. So our itinerary starts in the capital, and over 12 days, we make our way by public transport across the highlights of the country, some of the better known highlights, such as Tokyo and Kyoto, and some of the lesser known gems as well. So in the capital, as Jay said, it's not all about the food and the drink, it's also about the cultural highlights of the country. So we mix in some of the cultural highlights of Tokyo, as well as visiting some of the most incredible food markets, kitchen store markets. There's various shrines and temples we visit, as well as some gardens. And from the capital, we travel by bullet train. This map doesn't do the scenery justice. That's another highlight of Japan. It's an incredibly beautiful mountainous country. So that journey by bullet train is actually through the mountains, reaching over 3,000 meters in height, to the village of Takayama, where we swap our city and our hotel for a ryokan traditional accommodation, where we're in a rural setting. So in Takayama, we also learn about their local sake production and the hida, the famous beef production, as well as staying in the traditional accommodation. From there, we move on, this time by bus, via the UNESCO listed beautiful village of Shirakawa-go, with its hundreds of years old samurai thatched cottages, to Kanazawa. So now we've moved over to the Sea of Japan side. The Sea of Japan is slightly colder. There are different species of seafood and fish, and it's particularly prized for its seafood amongst the Japanese. And Kanazawa is a great example of that, and a place to see it in the, not least in Omicho Market. We'll try our hand at making a version of sushi while in Kanazawa, so tamaki sushi, and we'll also visit one of the finest Japanese gardens, Kenrokuan Gardens, before moving on again by bullet train, this time to the cultural beating heart of Japan. In Kyoto, most itineraries feature, at least on the first visit to Japan, a visit to the cultural capital of Kyoto. It's one of the few places that was one of the major cities that wasn't destroyed in the Second World War, so it's largely intact. You've got these incredible temples and shrines and palaces that are hundreds of years old, and it's got a really charming nature to it. So we spend some time in Kyoto seeing some of those cultural highlights, as well as joining a tea ceremony, trying the famous matcha tea, as well as a sake tasting, before we move on once again to Osaka. If you were to ask a Japanese person, what's the foodie capital of Japan? They're all very competitive, as all human beings are, but many will say Osaka. It's got a reputation as being one of the foodie capitals of the country. So it's a big city with 2.5 million people, but dwarfed by Tokyo. But it's got and it offers a nice contrast. It bookends the trip at the end, and we include incredible street food tour there, as well as some of the cultural sites. So that gives you an idea of the journey we make. And now I'll just talk about some different aspects. First of all, there are 3 countries in the world that are recognized, that the food is recognized as one of the really important cultural um, um, things that are important to the society. So France and Mexico are 2 countries, and Japan is the 3rd in the world. So UNESCO recognize and prize the Japanese food and drink as integral to its society. And that's reflected, for example, in a number of restaurants. So if you think New York City is a foodie city, I would say, it's got 27,000 restaurants. It's a great city for eating out. Tokyo's got 150,000. So there are endless choices of places to eat. And that's the same, that's replicated across the country. And the food is always, it's prized for its quality, and it's often seasonal, and it's also, so it's in season and it's local, so they prize um, the local goods and when they're in season. Another thing to mention would be, as well as the Michelin star. So you've got an idea of how many restaurants there are in Tokyo, but also it's got the largest concentration of Michelin-starred restaurants. So Tokyo, as an example, once again, 230 Michelin-starred restaurants, and second in the list in the world is Paris with 113. So you get an idea of what kind of foodie culture, and it's not all Michelin fine dining. It's also, there's endless options of street food for you to choose to graze on, as well as you make your way across the country. The photo in the top left is a photo I took in Osaka of them making some dough balls with delicious dough balls with octopus. And there's endless stalls selling different delicacies of street food there in Osaka. And on the right hand side is a kaiseki. So this is an example of a traditional multi-course Japanese meal. And we include a kaiseki dinner on that night, where we sleep in Takayama, where you can try all these exquisitely prepared dishes. That's another aspect of Japanese food. Not only is it high quality, locally sourced ingredients in season, it's also the presentation is absolutely immaculate, and the great variety of choice. It's not just sushi. There's so much more to Japanese cuisine, and each of the plates is chosen to reflect and to complement the color of the dish, of the food that's going into the bowl, or what have you. It's a little bit disheveled. I took the photo and people were mid-flow, so they'd already finished most of the meal. But when it's presented, it really is so beautiful. You almost don't want to touch it, but it is also not only beautiful, but absolutely delicious. So moving on, the Japanese do so many things in such a fantastic way, and I would say their transport system's a good example of this. They've got the best train system, and I'd say their trams and their buses and their metros are equally good in the world. I would say it's always bang on time, super modern. Not only are you traveling at high speed and comfort, you're traveling through a beautiful country. So it just makes perfect sense to choose public transport to make your way through Japan, and that's why we do it on virtually all of our tours. through the country. And one unexpected highlight for me when I was traveling across Japan by bullet train was in each and every station, you get a really wide array of endless line of shops that are preparing eki-bens. So you might have heard of bento boxes. So it's like a lunch to go. And eki means train and ben is short for bento. So they are train boxes of food. They're relatively inexpensive and they showcase the regional cuisine, and they are made quite often on the spot. You can see a chef in the background preparing the eki-bens, and each journey you've just a great excuse. It's there and it's delicious. So why not tuck in and get to try some of the regional local food as you make your way across Japan. Moving on to some of the other examples of food that you'll encounter. On the right hand side is an okonomiyaki. So it's a multi-layered savory pancake, absolutely delicious, involving vegetables and a multitude of ingredients. Each of the cities and towns of Japan will have different variations of this. We include an okonomiyaki in Tokyo, where you can choose to make it yourself following instructions at your table on a hot plate, or you can just relax and let the chef cook it and you watch them, and then you can tuck in and enjoy. On the top left, there's an example of one of the many temples that we sort of cherry pick the best temples to visit in each of the sites, but there's an endless supply of them. And also in the middle there, you can see sashimi and sushi in the bottom left. So one thing to say about seafood and fish is that it was only until the late 1800s that meat was incorporated into the diet in Japan. So it was largely a not a meat-eating destination until 150 years ago. So seafood is equally important through time in the cuisine. Next slide, on the right-hand side, I've already alluded to it when I was talking through the map. They are the Kenrokuan gardens, which have been immaculately sculpted and tended for and cared over centuries, resulting in what's thought to be the third most beautiful Japanese garden in the country. And we include a visit to that garden in Kanazawa on the Sea of Japan. And also on the left-hand side, no visit to Japan would be complete without seeing a tea ceremony. So making the famous matcha tea is a spiritual journey, making the tea, which is explained to you as they make the tea, that which you can then try. And traditionally, over hundreds of years, the tea itself is accompanied by a sweet treat, which are featured in the top left corner picture, which are wagashi, and they are sweet treats made from mochi bean paste and sculpted into flowers of the season. So we include a wagashi making experience so that you can eat these traditional sweets alongside the matcha tea, the green tea. I mentioned the temples. Each and every one of the Buddhist temples will have a Shinto shrine within it, and there'll be a spiritual entrance gate, which is called a Tori gate, which is Tori. And there's one temple in particular that's really photogenic, which is in Kyoto, that you can visit in your free time, which has, for a reason I can't remember now, many gates. So it's an endless array of hundreds of meters of vermilion Torii gates, which is a really cool place to visit in your free time. Keeping on the theme of food and drink, so I mentioned the trains you'll see pretty much everywhere, the temples you'll see everywhere, and another thing that you might not be expecting are vending machines. They are absolutely everywhere. There are over 5 million vending machines in Japan. That's one for every 22 people. And what's different to vending machines elsewhere in the world is every single one is in perfect working order, and they are always fully stocked miraculously, and they're hot and cold, not just drink. You can also get food, soups, umbrellas, toys, you name it. They sell everything under the sun. And the top left corner is a photo from the top of Mount Fuji. That's the highest one. And then there's also one in a train station under the ocean between two of the islands. And the bottom left picture, I was walking through the forest in the Japanese Alps on a trail in the middle of absolutely nowhere, and came across these two vending machines, which is a very Japan thing, just in the middle of nowhere, solar powered, had a nice hot drink, which was very welcome. So another drink that you probably heard of is sake, and sake is growing in popularity around the world, and it's having a resurgence in Japan as well. So it's a rice-based fermented drink, alcoholic drink, that is actually thought to be a really good pairing, really good. It pairs really well with all different types of food, and there's a great variety of sake. Sometimes it's drunk warm, sometimes it's cold, and there's lots of different styles. So it's a big subject, and to help you get to grips with it, we've included a sake tasting in Kyoto, but you might want to start drinking the sake from day one in Tokyo to start to get an idea of what it's like. It's generally produced in mountain villages. It needs clean air and cold, fresh water. And when we go through Takayama, which is the photo in the top left corner, that town is well known for producing high quality sake. So that's a good opportunity for trying some sake from very close to where it's actually made. And the barrels in the middle picture are how the sake is transported and traditionally held. And then in the bottom left is another famous produce from Takayama, which is the beef. People might have heard of Kobe beef, which is a really famous Japanese beef. There are actually 5 regions of Japan which produce effectively the same top quality beef that's famous for its fat marbling. So the fat is starting to render in this picture as it's cooking over the barbecue, and where there's fat, there's flavor, and that beef is absolutely incredible. So we include that as one of the experiences when we're traveling through Takayama on that part of the itinerary. So to wrap up, a little bit about the accommodation, because I think it's an important thing to manage expectations. The Japanese are relatively small people, and they're used to living in relatively cramped places. So their accommodation, their houses are much smaller than our houses in the West. And this is reflected also in hotels. So while the hotels we use are really clean, comfortable, well located, they do tend to be on the small side. So you can see there a picture of one of the rooms of a hotel that I slept in Tokyo. And you can imagine if there's 2 of you in there sharing that twin room, there's not a great deal of space to leave your suitcase open. So it's not a reason not to go, but just don't expect massive rooms. And it's also a good idea to pack light for that reason. And all the hotels actually have wash dryer machines that are really convenient and easy to use. So you don't have to take that many clothes if you wanted to pack light. Another thing which features in a lot of people's conversations about one of the curiosities of Japan are the toilets. So all singing, all dancing toilets from the future with heated seats, jets of water, warm and cold air, you name it, all at the control of a button. And the other thing to talk about is the one night where we spend in a ryokan, or a minshuku, which is a family-run ryokan. That is full Japanese style. So it is with sliding doors, tatami rice mat. This is the picture on the right-hand side. You can see the futon laid out at night to sleep in. And on the left-hand side, you're not en suite. You don't have en suite facilities. It's a communal bathing. So it's the same sex. There'll be 2 communal bathing areas where you get washed first of all. You see the plastic chairs and the shower heads there and the soap. You get washed nice and clean first of all, in front of the other people that are in there, and then you jump into the pool, which is hot water, and it's really super relaxing and a really nice way to end the day. So that's not everywhere we go. We just give you a slice of Japanese life for one night, and it is optional. There's also basins and a private bathing area, but in our experience, most people actually find it really liberating and interesting experience that adds to the overall memorable stay. So finally, I can tell you Japan's amazing, and I hope anybody you speak to who's been there will say the same thing. It really is a special place, but you can look online on the website for this trip, and you can see in more detail about the itinerary and also see what our clients who've travelled on this trip over the last year have thought about it with the independently verified reviews. It starts, we've got departures at the tail end of the cherry blossom season in April, running through into November, and it's a 12-day trip, and as I mentioned, it's 10 nights hotel and 1 night ryokan. So that is me done. I'm going to hand you over now to Ali to take you through France.
Thank you, James. That was fantastic. I definitely have Japan high on my list of places to go now. I'm going to take you on a little tour of France. So I had the absolute pleasure of going on this trip last month. Southern France is the perfect location for a food trip. The region itself has got a lot of culinary traditions and specialities that are delightful, but the towns of Bordeaux and Toulouse are really interesting. And our journey between those, we visit some fascinating medieval towns as well. So there's lots of food highlights, but also it's just a really interesting part of France to be in. It's lovely. So as I said, our trip starts in Bordeaux, and for me, this was my first time here, and it is such a beautiful city. Our accommodation is located right in the centre of the city, so it's a really easy place to explore the city from. We're right next to one of the main gates, which is the entrance to the pedestrianised area, so it's a lovely part of town to be in. What we did on the first day was met with the tour leader in this building on the left here. You can see it's actually a really beautiful building, and it's a restaurant, and it's got a great view of the square. And we sat upstairs in that restaurant, and he got the map out and explained to us the journey we were going to be making and what we were going to be eating en route and drinking. And we all had a drink, and we sat there and looked over it and salivated over the week that we had ahead of us. It was fantastic. And then after that, we had an orientation tour of Bordeaux with the tour leader, and he pointed out a lot of the sites to us then. Following that, we had a dinner together, which was absolutely fantastic. A very small restaurant that wasn't really in the guidebooks, you wouldn't have found by yourself, and packed full of locals. And it was a great way to start the week in France, having such a good culinary first experience. So next on our itinerary is Arcachon, and we take the train there, and Arcachon's out on the Atlantic coast. It's a town known for its seafood, and especially oysters. Oysters from Arcachon are considered to be the best in France, and when we arrive, we have a look out over the Bay of Arcachon and see where the oyster farms and oyster beds are, learn a bit about the farming of the oysters, and then we head into the market. And this market is just an assault on the senses. You know, it's absolutely chaotic, lots of smells, lots of noises, lots of people buying for restaurants, buying for own personal consumption, and it's got a real buzz. It's a great atmosphere. Now, right in the middle of that market is a fresh fish stand where you can try oysters and other bits and pieces, and that was one of the most interesting things for me, was because I didn't think I like oysters. I've tried them once before and thought, no, that's not for me. I'm not doing that again. But was convinced by the tour leader, no, these oysters are different. These are special. So I tried them, and I really liked them. So for me, it was great to have that experience. And I think part of it, the enjoyment was where we were, the atmosphere, everyone getting involved, and it was fantastic. After that, we actually have an included seafood lunch. So you get to try a few other things as well that we've seen through the market. Seafood, fish is the main component of the dishes. And that was fantastic. So after that long lunch and some wine, I will add, we take the train then back to Bordeaux. And when we're in Bordeaux, just before we head off for a free afternoon to explore the city, we go and visit a pastry shop where they make a traditional pastry called a quenelle, and it's like a baked custard, and it's soaked in rum. It's something that the monks started making years ago to use up ingredients that they were given. So we learn about that, we see the pastry, and we taste them, and then you've got the rest of the day free to explore. And we've actually included a travel pass, a 3-day travel pass for Bordeaux in this holiday, so you can head out on the trams, the buses, the water taxis, or just on foot and wander the main streets and really get to explore. So that's great. The following day, we went out into the countryside and we went to Saint-Emilion. It's a stunning medieval town, great architecture, but it's in the middle of wine country. And the area it's the principal red wine growing region of France, and it's absolutely littered with prestigious vineyards and chateaux. So we take this lovely train ride out into the countryside, and we're met by Stefano at the station in his eco buggies. So if you look at the top left picture there, that's basically imagine a big golf buggy, golf cart, these electric powered vehicles, and we then go around all the vineyards and have a look at the area, which is fascinating. We make stops along the way, and Stefano explains to us a bit about the viticulture, including pest control, pruning, grape variety harvest, and talks you through what happens in a season there. And then when we finish, we go to his chateau and we learned about the wine production before having a tasting. And it was absolutely fascinating. And I've done wine estate tours before, but this one was special. It was brilliant because it was personal first-hand experience. It was a small family-run operation. It wasn't somewhere that was churning out thousands of bottles of wine, and there wasn't tour bus after tour bus turning up. It felt personal, it felt special, and I personally really enjoyed it. So that was a highlight for me. Then Stefano took us in his golf buggies off to the town, and we explored the medieval town, found a nice spot for lunch, and then took the train back to Bordeaux. Saint-Emilion's almost also famous for its macarons, and the tour leader had bought us a box of macarons, and we ate those on the train on the way back. So I would say actually we didn't stop eating and drinking on this trip. It was definitely not one that you'll go hungry on. And then once back in Bordeaux, we finished off at the wine museum. So the bottom left picture there, and the building itself is very impressive. It's meant to resemble a wine glass. So it's an interesting structure, but also it's quite a sensory experience inside. They've used quite a lot of advanced technology to engage visitors. So you could be watching an immersive video display or head over to the scent station and had taken all the smells of wine production and different flavors that you might detect within a wine. And then you head up onto the roof and have a complimentary glass of wine of your choosing from a vast array of wines and have a great view of the city from there. So that for me was a great way to end our wine themed day. And then our next stop was Sarlat. So the region of Sarlat is famous for traditional dishes using duck. So duck confit, duck foie gras, which talked about quite a lot, walnut-based desserts, and truffles. So we go to Sarlat on market day. And market day, the market in Sarlat is the largest in the region by far. And we wandered through, stopped at all these different stalls with the tour leader. He'd engage us with the stall holders and tell us about the produce they were selling. We tried different cheeses, bread, sweets, desserts, duck sausage, you name it, we tried it. And of course, we ended it with another wine tasting. So we grazed our way around the market. And then at the end of that day, we have a duck-based dinner at a local restaurant, which is a small family-run restaurant again, and they just specialise in different duck dishes. And we had the choice of whatever we wanted there. And it was, again, another wonderful meal. And then next we went on to something which was an unexpected highlight for me. I absolutely loved it. This stands out as my favourite day on the tour. And we went truffle hunting. Truffles are a type of fungi that grow underground, so typically near the roots of certain trees like oak and hazel trees. They're highly prized in the culinary world, they're quite expensive, and they're known for their strong flavour and smell. And they only grow in a few places in the world, so it was a real highlight to take part in quite a rare experience for ourselves. We met the guide here, Adrian, and his lovely dog Punty, and he showed us around his farm and explained to us the different types of truffles. So there's summer varieties and winter varieties. He showed us how they grow, where they grow, and how the whole process works. He told us how he trained his dog to sniff out the truffles, and then we went for a walk into the orchard, and Adrian would call out "Cherchez Punty," which basically means go and look, and then he'd run off, sniff out a truffle, start digging. Adrian would then run over, give the dog a reward, which was a slice of cheese, and he'd retrieve the truffle and show it to us. So it was like win-win. It was fantastic all round. And it was fascinating. Now I've prepared a little video for us here, so hopefully you get a bit more of an understanding of what what that experience was like. And then next the last thing we did whilst we were in Sarlat was have a private cookery class, and we went to a restaurant called La Savie, and this is Chef Frederick here. So he's got a farmhouse in the middle of the countryside, in the middle of nowhere. It's not on a main road, there's no footfall, you're not going to find it by walking past. And he relies entirely on word of mouth and his reputation, and he's always busy. He's known for his seasonal menus, and he invited us into his kitchen to make 3 different dishes. We made these dishes with him, with his help and direction. We foraged for edible flowers and herbs to decorate the dishes. And then when each one was ready, we went upstairs and all sat down together and enjoyed that course before going down to the kitchen to make the next one. He taught me some new techniques and 3 great recipes, and he also shared some stories about his life in a more rural part of France, and he was a fascinating guy. He also had an assistant there who was running around after us, clearing up all the mess we were making, doing the washing up and making sure our wine glasses were filled up. It was so much fun. It was such a lovely evening, and it's something that the rest of the group said to me afterwards, actually that was possibly the highlight of the trip for them. They really enjoyed that special experience. And then we move on from Sarlat. So we leave Sarlat and we travel by bus to Rocamadour on our way to Toulouse. Rocamadour region is known for goat's cheese. So we make a visit to a goat cheese farm. We learn about cheese production. We get to try the different cheeses. It's a soft, mild goat's cheese. It's disc shaped, but they've got different ages, and we could taste to compare and contrast the different cheeses. And we stopped at Rocamadour, which is the picture on the left. So it's a famous hillside town. It's perched on the edge of a cliff. And we had a tour there with a local guide that told us all about the history, and that was fascinating as well. And then we went on to Toulouse, and Toulouse is often called the Pink City because of its terracotta brick architecture. And we had an orientation walk there with the tour leader. We weren't there for long before we headed out again. So the next day we were off into Carcassonne. Carcassonne is a World Heritage Site. It's recognised for its preservation and historical significance. So the fortress itself has double walls and it has 52 towers. It dates back to the Roman times, but was extensively restored in the 19th century. And the restoration, although controversial at the time, has made Carcassonne one of the most complete and impressive medieval fortifications in Europe. So it's a really stunning place to go and have a look at. We had a guided visit with the tour leader and then time to wander by ourselves and find a nice cafe for lunch. But before heading back to Toulouse, we met up in a local bar and tried a local drink called Blanquette de Limur, and it's a sparkling wine. It's similar to Cremant. It's crisp and refreshing, but it's one of the oldest sparkling wines in the world, and it's got history dating back several centuries. So it was even before the famous sparkling wines of Champagne were developed. So really fascinating history and a lovely tasting and a great way to finish our trip in Carcassonne. But to help us soak up the bubbles on the train on the way home, the tour leader gave us a chocolatine, and that's the picture on the right, which to you and me probably looks a bit more like a pain au chocolat, but he explained some of the interesting stories about pastry wars in southern France and why it's called a chocolatine. I won't tell you the story, you'll have to go on the trip to find out. But I will tell you, if you go to this area of France and you go into a pâtissière and you ask for a pain au chocolat, there is the small chance you might get charged an extra €1, which is kind of like a tourist tax because you're obviously not local. But it was fascinating, and that helped soak up the bubbles. And then we were back in Toulouse and we have our last group meal together, and we went out to a local restaurant and had a dish called cassoulet, and it's a hearty, flavorful casserole dish. It was food of peasants originally. Is a comfort food, delicious, tasty, lots of ingredients in it, beans, meat, sometimes duck and poultry. And we went to a local restaurant, with lots of atmosphere, very busy, lots of fun, lots of red wine was drunk, and we all enjoyed this final last meal together. So a lovely way to end the holiday. I would like to make just a mention to the accommodation, and we've got some great locations, both in Bordeaux and Toulouse, with city centre locations. The picture on the right is the hotel in Bordeaux, right next to one of the main gates, but also the edge of the pedestrianised area, so it's quite quiet for traffic noise. There's no traffic noise, and you're right on the edge of all the action, so you can wander into the town. It's a perfect location. The top left picture is the swimming pool from the hotel in Sarlat. When we're outside of the city, you get a bit more space and more facilities. The pool looks lovely, but it was a bit cold last month. But if you travel with us next month, maybe you can have a dip in the pool. And the breakfast buffets. So there was no end of food on this trip. We were always eating or drinking something, but the breakfast buffets were really comprehensive. And if you felt you'd missed out on a bit of cheese, or you'd not had enough cured meats, or you'd not tried that extra pastry or a home cooked cake, they were all at the breakfast buffet. So you could literally start your day however you wanted, a light snack or with the things that you think, right, I must try this before I leave France. And yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up A Taste of Southern France. It's an 8-day holiday. We operate the trip from April until October, but we miss out the peak summer months because of heat. It's 7 nights in standard, comfortable twin share accommodation. And we've got more details obviously on the website if you want to have a look at those links. But what I'll do now is hand you over to Valentina, who will show you the wonderful foodie delights that Georgia has to offer.
Good evening, everyone. This is Valentina, and I will take you to Georgia now. I was lucky enough to go to Georgia for the first time a few months ago, and I absolutely loved it. The first thing that I asked the tour leader when I landed was, are we in Europe or are we in Asia? And after a few minutes of explanation, turns out it's actually both. It depends which map you're looking at, which part of the country you're in, and sometimes even who you're talking to. Georgia has always been a popular destination for us, so going for a foodie tour was a no-brainer, even because it's probably Georgia's best kept secret. Despite the influences from Turkey, Armenia, the Arabic world, Russia, and the Persian cuisine, probably the geography of the country managed to, like the mountains mostly, managed to protect the regional dialects, the costumes, and culinary traditions. As you can see from the map, literally all the roads lead to Tbilisi, and there is a mix of monasteries, fortresses, and lots of food. I didn't feel the sense of hunger for 8 days. It was brilliant. We start in Tbilisi, which is the capital. And you will see in the next picture that it's basically, it's an amazing melting pot of architectural styles. If you could zoom in, you could literally see the medieval, modern, there are skyscrapers, there are Persian buildings, Soviet buildings, and it's really a fantastic city. It was like nothing I've ever seen before. Out of the 3.7 million citizens of Georgia, 1.1 million live in Tbilisi, so you can imagine there is a lot going on. The vibe is fantastic, and I would strongly suggest to spend 1 or 2 extra nights if you choose to go to Georgia. You can see in the picture at the bottom right the sofa baths, which are from the 5th century. They have amazing mosaics inside and outside, and they were quite popular during Soviet times. One thing that really stuck with me was the story about the Italian courtyards. Nothing to do with Italy, but they became quite popular after the 19th century. And it was literally this setting where people were living together, different religions, different nationalities even, but they were living, growing together, cooking together. And so that's also what made the Georgian cuisine what it is today. While in Tbilisi, the food experience starts with a lobiani tasting for lunch. Lobiani means beans in Georgian, and it's basically this beautiful baked bread with this beans-based filling, and they also have different variations with ham and other things. They're all amazing. After leaving the capital, we moved to the wine region, the Kakheti region, and we stay there for 2 days. As you can imagine, anything that's wine related is it's amazing, and it is an amazing place to be. I'll give you a bit of an introduction of what to expect from a typical Georgian meal. They would normally start with cold starters, and you can see there is a picture to the left in the middle, and there are aubergine rolls with walnut paste and beetroot fkali with walnuts too. They are vegan, they are amazing. I think I had them twice a day for the whole duration of the tour. We also have a Mtsvadi barbecue with a local family, which is mostly pork, but the meat is not marinated, so the meat retains its natural flavor. So it's not like the kebab kind of meat that we are used to having in this part of the world. Georgians are fantastic bread makers. I think I've never had such an amazing varieties of bread, and the quality and the smell, it was absolutely mind-blowing. So it's not surprised that khachapuri, which is its base is bread, is so good and popular. You can see it at the top, sorry, at the bottom left picture, and that's a specific one from a region by the Black Sea, and it has like a raw egg that they serve when it's just out of the oven, and you just mix it with the cheese, and it's mind-blowing, absolutely amazing. But as I promised, it's not just food, so we also see some amazing sites. And in this region, we go to Gremi Fortress, which is a 16th century complex where once there was a very nice flourishing town. As I said, wine is the prima donna, let's say, of the region. Turns out that Georgia was the first winemaking region in the world, and they started making it over 8,000 years ago. Keep in mind that there are over 2,000 grape varieties in the world, and 500 are indigenous to Georgia. They also have a special way of fermenting the wine. They use clay jars. You can see them at the top left of the slide, and some of them are big enough to contain a person. They're called kvevri, and Georgian people like to say that it's like a unicorn. We translate it as clay jars just to understand what we're talking about, but it's like a unicorn. There is no translation. It's very unique, and they are literally the only ones to do that in that part of the world. So basically the wine gets put in these jars, then the jars get buried underground, so the temperature stays cool and stable throughout the year. And for me, like the star of the show was amber wine, which has quite a strong, unique taste, and that's the result of it's not just the nice part of the grape, but they just keep everything, the skin, seed, stem, everything. So it was really special to taste that. We went to a fantastic family-owned winery, and you can see the bottles of wine in the pictures. It was a fantastic tour. The wine was delicious, and the owner was a big character. He couldn't really speak English, so the tour leader was translating for us. But when we left, he managed to say thank you. It was great to have you here, and he was going to put his dad. He was going to make his dad dinner and then put him to bed. And the dad was actually the founder of the family business. So you really get that sense of family, of closeness. It doesn't get more local and warmer than that. I really love that. We carry on exploring the Kakheti region. And on to the next slide, you will be able to see some of the pictures from the Tel Aviv Farmers Market. And that's a great chance to mingle with locals, sample some of the fruit and cheeses and sweets. But like for me, one of the definite highlights was the visit to the Pankisi Valley, where we meet the Kis Georgian community. So they are Chechen, sub-ethnic group in Georgia. their features even are different. They have green, blue eyes. They're really beautiful. They have their own schools and dialects, and they're mostly Muslim. So this is like a really nice off the beaten track experience. It was really nice to see the women earn their wages cooking for tourists, and the family that we visit produce their own alcohol-free beer. What they made for us was the traditional dish, which is called Gigi Galnish, and you can see it at the bottom left. And it's basically a lamb stew, which lays on layers of, it's a kind of pasta, like homemade pasta. And on the side, there is a garlic sauce. Generally, the Georgians haven't really developed a sweet tooth. So after a meal, you would have fresh fruit or candied walnuts. And where you can see it, it's that special thing that looks like a salami. It's almost like a candle shape. That's called churchkela, which is produced year-round, and it's basically walnuts on a string, and then they are dipped in grape juice and cornstarch. It's really delicious. You can also buy a couple at the beginning of the tour, and then it just stays fresh for a long time, and you can just even take them home. As I promised, so in the previous slide, we basically have Mishketa, which is one of the oldest cities in Georgia. It's a beautiful panorama from the Hvari monastery, which dates back to the 6th century, and it has spectacular views, as you can see. Here you can see the confluence of two rivers, the Arakvi, which is green-blue coming from the mountains, and the Kura River, which is kind of brown and has darker colors, which comes from Turkey and then heads to Tbilisi. We then go down to the valley and we visit the cathedral, which is from the 11th century, and it can be considered kind of a Vatican for the Georgians. It's really important. A change of scenery, we go to a cave town, which is called Uplistika, and it's one of the oldest settlements in the Caucasus. The earliest traces of human life is from the end of the 2nd millennium before Christ, BC, so really, really old. And it was also an important city on the Silk Road. The next slide this is probably showing you one of the highlights for me. So this lady here is called Teona. So this lunch and cooking lesson with local people was like, the setting was a bit more modern compared to the others, but still the food was 100% traditional, handmade. It was super delicious. I was making kinkali in the picture with Teona. I really enjoyed that. Kinkalis are like dumplings with spiced meat. It's normally beef and pork or lamb, with the addition of herbs and onions. There is a special way to eat them. You basically hold them upside down. You do not eat the handle, you bite them. They are normally served really, really hot. So you need to be careful with the juice that comes out, which is delicious. Then you eat the rest and you leave the handle on the plate. And at the end of the meal, you can count how many you've had. I would say that overall, yes, the high quality of the food really impressed me, but like the people, they are just fantastic. When you meet local people for like a meal, or even in the street or at a local cafe, there is no pretense. Everything is very natural, and they love hosting you, feeding you. They are really beyond welcoming. The lady to the left is called Verico, and this is where we go for the barbecue lunch, and it really felt like home. It really felt like going to see a relative. To the right, there is it's not like something that is necessarily included, but we did it as a extra stop on the road. There are these ladies who bake bread nearby tourist sites, and they have like these small rooms where they have a traditional oven, like a clay oven that you can see in the picture. And the bread was so fresh, the cheese was fantastic. And bear in mind that after 1991, when Georgia became independent from the Soviet Union, there was no permanent electricity up until 2003, which means that people, like to this day, people in their late 30s can actually cook using traditional methods. So probably not in Tbilisi, but in the rest of the country, that like young families would still use clay ovens, which is quite fantastic. And then on to the next slide, it's Ghergheti Trinity Church. This is probably one of the most famous places that you would see in pictures when you Google about Georgia. So before going back to the capital, we head north to the mountains, following Military Road, which was the main road connection with Russia, and today is actually the only open border between Russia and Georgia. We visit the gorge, and then we go towards the border to visit the Dariali Monastery complex, which is actually very new. And it was Georgia trying to send a message to whoever was crossing the border, and they were just trying to say, make no mistake, this is Georgia, which was quite clever. We spend the night in the mountains, and then the morning after we drive up to Ghergheti Trinity Monastery, and there is also an optional hike. So basically the monks built the monastery in the 14th century, and it's really impressive. It was an impressive effort because they do get very long and cold winters. They get lots of snow. So it's really a mystery of how they really managed to build this amazing monastery up there, but they did it. The setting is enchanting, and on a clear day you can actually see Mount Kazbegi, which is over 5,000 meter. One of probably the last food highlight for me was the tea and jam tasting here in the mountains. And one of the flavors that really made an impression on me was this jam made with mini pine cones. And I mean, I don't know what a forest tastes like, but it was like eating a forest. So there was this like explosion of flavor in my mouth, and it was really special because sometimes, yeah, it's nice to have like a better version of bread or cheese when you travel, but like in that instance, I really tried something which was a completely new flavor. So that was really special. And yeah, and then we can talk about accommodation. So the accommodation is graded as comfortable on our website. I would say it's the higher end of comfortable. There are a couple of boutique hotels. They all benefit from excellent position. In Tbilisi, we have direct access to the old town, and the picture to the right, the big one, actually shows the view from the breakfast room. Amazing, really amazing. And yeah, I mean, it's an amazing destination. We have an excellent ground agent, and we also have non-foodie tours to Georgia. But I have to say, there is no way of escaping the fantastic food anyway. The Taste of Georgia food is 8 days long, and we run the tour from May till September. But actually, you can visit Georgia from April to October quite easily. And the one last thing that I want to leave you with is I'm Italian, and I have very annoying high standard when it comes to food. And I find myself thinking about pizza when I'm driving, when I'm in meetings. And after having been to Georgia, I occasionally think about khachapuri too. So I think that says a lot about how amazing the food is in this country. So yeah, hope you will now think about going to Georgia. And this is me, and back to Jay.
Thank you so much, Vale. That's so funny. We all know that Vale has very high food standards. So wonderful that she likes the cacciatore most, or dreams about that too. And thank you to everyone. I can't believe the vending machines, James, in the middle of nowhere. How extraordinary. And Ali, proper inside knowledge on that chocolatine. I'll have to chat to you about that later to work out how I don't spend that extra euro. Thank you, everyone. We are really close. I think we've just hit our hour, so we're going to do a very quick Q&A. But before that, just to let you know that you can get in touch with us about anything. We're a group of people who love talking about our tours, so please get in touch and talk to us if you've got any questions, or go to your preferred travel agent. These are just 3 of the food focused tours we do. There's lots more available. As you can see here, we've got a range of destinations just waiting to be discovered, and we do have some specific vegetarian departures to India. And we've got a little video now just to show you some of those other tours. So as you can say, a really good range. We've had lots of questions coming in. I'm going to ask for our experts just to answer a few quick ones now, but we will also put Q&As into the email that we send you, so you can see those afterwards. And then we will have tell you a little bit about the offer and a quick prize draw at the end. But we'll get moving quick, because I know that everyone is probably looking at the time now. So if ever of my colleagues would like to join me back on screen, and I will ask a quick question about generally, I see there are some cooking classes in these. Actually, I'm just back from Sri Lanka, and it wasn't one of our food tours, but it was one of our trips, and there was a cooking class in there. Do you need to be a good cook to enjoy the cooking classes on these tours?
I think I'll answer that one if that's okay, guys. The simple answer is no, especially for the cookery class we did. We were all helping to make dishes together, so everyone was allocated a task to create that dish. It wasn't a case of you all had your ingredients and you all made your separate dish. We all combined resources together, and some of the jobs were perhaps more exciting than others, but the instructor, the chef, he showed us step by step what to do and was on hand with any questions. So no, it made it easy and fun, like not a pressure environment to stress about getting the dish wrong for other people. It was a lovely way of doing it, and no, you didn't need any experience before.
That sounds great. And how about Georgia? Valley, would you compare Georgian cuisine to any other cuisine?
Not really. I couldn't really find similarities. They literally do their own thing. And as I said, despite all the influences, they managed to take all the suggestions, let's say, from neighbors and invaders, but they just created their own special set of meals, and they did an amazing job.
Yeah, it looks wonderful. I love the idea of a forest in your mouth. That sounded very exciting.
I didn't know how to explain it, but yeah.
Great. James, we know that you told us that there are sort of twice as many Michelin-starred restaurants in Tokyo as Paris. I couldn't quite believe that. But obviously there are lots of fabulous restaurants in Tokyo. Is there some free time on trips to book your own dinners in places that you'd like to visit?
Absolutely. It tends to be on the first night in most places. The tour leader will arrange for a meal. There's one included dinner on this trip, but on a number of other nights, it's made really clear actually on the tour notes where the nights are free, because I think what's happened is that people come and they want to book that Michelin-starred restaurant. So we make it really clear which night. And I said one dinner, that's a lie. It's 5 dinners are included. So there's a further 5 nights that are free. But
Wonderful.
For those that don't book their own thing on those evenings, the tour leader invariably arranges a dinner for those that are interested.
Lovely, thank you. Ali, last question. What was the weirdest or best thing you ate in France?
Ooh, interesting. Well, the oysters was quite a moment for me, I'm not going to lie. But probably the duck dinner we had in Salat. I mean, I don't eat much duck over here at all, so it felt like a treat anyway. And it was cooked, yeah, by experts, really. They do it day in, day out, and they've finely tuned that dish, and it was absolutely perfect. So, yeah, I think that's probably that. And I did very much enjoy the sparkling wine tasting as well.
That looked good. That was a bit of me. That sparkling wine tasting looked fantastic. Fabulous. Thank you ever so much, gang. I really appreciate you being here and sharing all of that with us. We are going to send out, as I said, the recording, link to the recording and some of those FAQs that people have been asking, but we're just a call or email away if you want to ask anything else. So I'd like to thank my colleagues for joining me, the team behind the scenes too, for helping answer questions and organise the whole thing. But most of all, thank you to you for joining us tonight. Please look out for that email in the next few days with a recording and a short feedback survey. I really hope you've enjoyed yourself. Goodbye.